Welcome back to the show, everybody. We got Brad Garlinghouse at Davos. You're going to want every single bit of it. And James Wallis, the head of central bank engagement for Ripple as well. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow us on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter for exclusive content right now. Just under $1 trillion at 997 billion. We're off by 2.7%. Good morning. Bitcoin 20,700 plus, Ethereum 1,500 plus, Tether market cap 66.4 billion. They say XRP is 38 cents. Let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to put on the XRP Army event of a lifetime. And when I tell you that, I mean that. This is going to be an incredibly immersive event. This is going to be remarkable. I have got incredible speakers already. I will announce them soon. If you want to be a part of this event, you need to click the link underneath the video. And if you want to get VIP access to this event, you need to join the Digital Perspectives Mastermind group now. The door is going to shut on this. The Digital Perspective Mastermind group is exactly that. It is a mastermind of over 150 some people who are absolutely brilliant. And we have private groups and courses, full access, VIP ticket with the annual subscription. Do not mess around. When I'm telling you I'm going to shut the door on this, I've shut the door on the other deals. And we're going to shut the door on this one. Do not mess around. Click those links. Get yourself into that group. It is going to be the XRP Army event of a lifetime. I tell you that. Cross-border payments, as a reminder, we covered this yesterday. Ripple has emerged as one of the most traded assets. And I'm just reminding you this as we set the stage. We're about to hear from Brad Garlinghouse at Davos. And you're also going to hear from James Wallis. And you're going to want every single bit of it. But let's start level setting right here, because XRP transactions through BTC markets out of Australia accounted for 10.2 million in the 24-hour volume in Sydney-based independent reserve, which is far more than all other cryptocurrencies combined over that period. And that's use case, baby. That ain't speculation. That's use case. Let's move into this now. Here's a clip from Davos here, and the plan is proceeding on schedule and under budget. Let's take a listen to this quick clip here.
We're here today to share the findings of the World Economic Forum's Global Security Outlook Report 2023. This is a result of research in collaboration with the forum's communities and our partner Accenture, in which we've interviewed and sought input from over 300 executives globally. The most striking finding that we found is that 93% of cyber leaders and 86% of cyber business leaders believe that the geopolitical instability makes a catastrophic cyber event likely in the next 2 years.
Wow. The same entity that told us about the pandemic we got 2 years before it hit is now telling us we're going to have a cyber attack that's catastrophic globally. First thing I thought was, how do you get all of these big, gigantic legacy players to give up the friction that they make so much money on in the current system? You cyber attack it. Call me cynical. But I mean, this person's forecasting it for the next 2 years. What do you make of that? Well, let's take a look at this. Bankers and regulators at the WEF Davos expressed concerns about Bitcoin adoption and call for urgent regulation. Again, watching it closely, we see large players like BlackRock taking a position and others. We know that they're taking positions in this. I have to wonder, is Bitcoin that shiny distraction to keep retail consumers away from gold because bankers are accumulating gold at an alarming rate? Here it is right here. Shout out to DAI for this clip. Look, I'm going to play this whole clip because it's fantastic and it is loaded with tons of information. So I'm going to let Brad talk, and then afterwards we're going to highlight a couple key points and takeaways from this that we all really need to pay attention to. Take a listen.
We're now processing billions of dollars of transactions every quarter. And well over half of our total transaction volume, because we do have a fiat and XRP enabled product called on-demand liquidity. Over half of all of our transactions go through XRP now. That has grown. And so, we did have some exposure to FTX. Yeah. I think we publicly shared before there's around just over $10 million of XRP we had leased to FTX that they used for various things on FTX. What we get back from that, I have no idea. The alleged fraud. We'll see how the bankruptcy stuff plays out. And as I said, regardless of that, again, some companies were way overexposed and I think found themselves in a very stressful situation because they had too much exposure, too much debt, too many of those types of things. And for us, that I think represented about 1% of liquid assets. So, I would rather not lose that money. And I'm hopeful that through the bankruptcy process, we get some or all of it back, but it's not too consequential to the business. Well, we publicly, when the layoffs in crypto started, we publicly announced we're still hiring. I think in Q2 last year, we hired 100 people. In Q3, we hired 100 people. Q4 is a little less than that, partly because of the holidays. We have no plans to do any layoffs. We're going to continue to grow and hire. And again, that's just, we sign more customers. We need more people to support those customers. We need, we're obviously building, well, not obviously, we're building new products that we are excited about. And even, conversations I've had here in Davos, we have existing customers coming to us wanting help with other elements of the kind of crypto ecosystem.
How are you expecting to be resolved? Are you expecting to reach a settlement with the SEC or just let the judge decide on this one?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we're now 2 years and 2 months in, or 2 years and 1 month into the lawsuit. SEC filed suit against us, saying that our sales of XRP represented sales of unregistered securities. And, from the beginning, I thought it was very clear that the facts were on our side and the law was on our side. And I think as you have seen this play out and you've seen the filings in the court, that, the judge certainly is hearing our arguments. There's been, I think the SEC's behavior and some of it has been, I would say embarrassing as a U.S. citizen. That, just some of the things you've seen happen, you're like, you got to be kidding. But look, it's now fully filed and fully briefed in front of the judge and the second district. And we expect a decision from the judge, certainly in 2023. But you don't really have any control over when a judge makes their decisions. And I'm optimistic that, sometime in the coming single-digit number of months, we'll have closure there. To your question about settlement, the problem here is the SEC, and particularly Gary Gensler, has articulated a view that all crypto is a security. The only way that Ripple would settle, and I've said this at the very beginning, the only way we would settle is if there's clarity that XRP is not a security on a go-forward basis. So you have this conundrum where the SEC is saying all crypto is a security. We're saying there's only a settlement if we can say XRP is not a security on a go-forward basis. So the Venn diagram for settlement is, I think, zero. So I think we're going to end up letting the judge decide, and I'm very optimistic. And I think people here in this audience know, and here at Davos know, this case is very important to crypto, not just for Ripple. It's for the whole industry. And I think that the fight that we've been fighting really, in some ways, has been for the whole industry.
And in terms of the SEC specifically, you've been critical of the way the US has approached regulation towards the industry. What exactly, are you concerned about, and why are you critical of the way the US has approached?
Well, two things. One, something called regulation through enforcement is never a particularly efficient way to regulate, right? If you want to regulate, do the work, write the rules, codify the rules, and when a company comes to you and says, hey, help me understand the rules, I want to make sure we're following the rules, help them understand the rules. I met personally with the SEC 3 times. Not once in those meetings did the SEC ever say to me, hey, and by the way, we're totally transparent about what we're doing. Not once did the SEC say, hey, we think XRP might be a security. So then for the later on to go back and say, hey, the whole time we thought XRP was a security, we just didn't tell you. That doesn't feel like a genuine, partnership between public sector and private sector. Moreover, and some of this stuff I'll be more vague about because some of this stuff it hasn't been public yet. But yeah, there's something called the Hinman email. Bill Hinman, the director of corporate finance at the SEC, gave a speech in June 2018 about how ETH had been a security, but had magically become not a security. And there's some emails associated with that the judge ordered turned over 6 times. We finally did get those emails. And I think when those come to light, I think you will see more kind of like, how is it possible the SEC decided to bring a case against Ripple, given what they were saying within their own walls?
Yeah, and then if you look at the global regulatory landscape, where do you think is sort of on the right track? In the European Union, you've got this MiCA regulation coming in, which sort of specifically targets things like stable coins and exchanges. Is that a good first step? I mean, where do you see good regulation or good talk about regulation happening?
So I think MiCA is a good first step. And I also, maybe not dodging your question, I'll get there. But I think one of the things that I have been struck by is how much the U.S. regulatory discussion has dominated some of the meetings I've been in here in Davos. And it loses sight of the fact that globally, the direction of travel on crypto regulation is actually quite positive. You have more and more countries doing the work to codify and be clear. And these aren't small countries. This includes the UK and Japan, certainly here in Switzerland, Singapore, the UAE. You're even seeing countries like South Africa start to do that work. And again, instead of regulation through enforcement, it's actually, hey, let's take the time, let's partner with private sector to write down and be clear about those rules. So leaving the US aside, I think it's actually quite positive. And yes, the US is the largest economy in the world, but there's a big economy out there. And again, Ripple has thrived over the last 2 years, and we basically haven't been able to sell into the United States market.
So that's why you've seen a lot of traction outside of the US so far in the business.
Right.
Great.
There you have it. And excellent remarks and so much inside of it. So first of all, 10 million exposure to FTX, right? So let's understand that. That was big. And then we understand this, just like John Deaton has said, 9 days after the SEC filed the case against Ripple, alleging XRP itself was, is, and always will be a security. That's what the complaint and the summary judgment claim. I filed the writ of mandamus versus the SEC and said the lawsuit appeared to be used as a weapon. And I absolutely agree with every single bit of that. We don't need to play this clip again here, but, it really is damning what the Hinman emails are saying. I mean, let me indulge me here, if you will. Listen to this.
Well, two things. One, something called regulation through enforcement is never a particularly efficient way to regulate, right? If you want to regulate, do the work, write the rules, codify the rules. And when a company comes to you and says, hey, help me understand the rules, I want to make sure we're following the rules, help them understand the rules. I met personally with the SEC 3 times. Not once in those meetings did the SEC ever say to me, hey, and by the way, we're totally transparent about what we're doing. Not once did the SEC say, hey, we think XRP might be a security. So then for the later on to go back and say, hey, the whole time we thought XRP was a security, we just didn't tell you. That doesn't feel like a genuine partnership between public sector and private sector. Moreover, and some of this stuff I'll be more vague about because some of this stuff, it hasn't been public yet. But there's something called the Hinman email. Bill Hinman, the director of corporate finance at the SEC, gave a speech in June 2018 about how ETH had been a security, but had magically become not a security.
But it magically have become not a security. Magically.
And there's some emails associated with that the judge ordered turned over 6 times. We finally did get those emails. And I think when those come to light, I think you will see more kind of like, how is it possible the SEC decided to bring a case against Ripple, given what they were saying within their own walls?
Yeah.
And given what they were saying within their own walls, when they come to light, Brad Garlinghouse is absolutely projecting that these things will become public. Well, maybe that's posturing to still, hedge for some kind of settlement, but he said settlement's off the table. He also reminded us that they're still hiring, right? Then there was this key point, which I thought was really highlighted well here from Molly Elmore. Shout out to her and Nathan Price. Over half the transaction volume now runs through XRP. And if you listen to the end, Brad brings up a virtuous cycle here, and he does right here towards the end. Take a listen.
We're continuing to sign more contracts, more customers, and then the contracts and customers we have grown, partly because we opened more corridors, more currency pairs. And so there's kind of a nice series of building the positive virtuous cycle that helps grow the business.
Absolutely, which is really something good that you've done, has a positive effect, and it just continues to be a cumulative positive effect from what you actually took action on, creating this virtuous cycle that continues to repeat itself and grow. It reminds me of what Naveen Gupta had said about step change, about a tipping point, right? And that feels to line up very, very well right there. Let's take a look at this, because I thought this was another great reminder, and this is something we have talked about heavily on this channel. Shout out to Linda P. Jones and Fredo. I guess is it Alea? I don't know. But shout out to Fredo. They share here, leases certain wallets that are being used for XRP sales also provide short-term leases to market makers and participants. This is worth noting, given the often incorrectly interpreted by market participants as sales. Leases are ultimately returned to Ripple. The total amount of leases outstanding in Q2 of 2022 was 115.3 million XRP. As we talked about here, Ripple said since Q4 2019, they don't sell to retail exchanges. Since Q4 of 2019, they only deal with ODL partners. And by the way, they buy back off of the exchanges you and I can still get XRP off of. So what does it say about an asset when a company leases it and doesn't sell it? It's similar to when a house is for lease. The owner thinks it is likely to be much more valuable in the future, and they don't want to sell it now when the price is low. Bingo. That's how I got it. Now let's bring it home with James Wallis here and Thinking Crypto. Shout out to him for a great conversation here. Listen to how James Wallis describes that they're on every major currencies association for developing CBDCs. Quite remarkable.
I read reports that Ripple, along with other companies, like believe the firm is Digital Assets and so forth, are advising the Fed. I can't remember if it was the New York Fed or which one, on the digital dollar. And can you tell us anything about that? And as well as, do you expect the digital dollar to come to be live this year?
The answer to the last question is no.
Okay.
Do not expect there to be a digital dollar this year. We can maybe come back to that. Okay. So look, in the US, as I mentioned earlier, it's a complex environment. So we are a member of the Digital Dollar Association. So this is an independent group that is working on a digital dollar strategy and technology, and they are providing sort of input and thought leadership to the Fed.
That's the Digital Dollar Project. Shout out to Chris Giancarlo.
We separately through our business have relationships with the Fed, both some of the local Feds as well as the Federal Reserve Board. But I think in the US, it's going to be a journey. I think we'll see some regulation coming in around stablecoins, probably before we'll see regulation coming in around CBDC.
Exactly what we've been projecting here, and exactly how we've been reading the tea leaves right here on this channel as well.
There's so many different interested parties, and both on the Hill and also in terms of commercial banks having thoughts across this. So I think it's going to take a while. I think the thing that might speed it up is if other major currencies accelerate what they're doing. So if in Europe, they move a lot more quickly, which they may do, I think that might encourage the US to move more quickly.
This is exactly what I've pointed out as well. I don't believe the G7, G20, well, we're going to do one this year, and then another G7 20 is going to do one in 3 years. I don't think that happens like that, and I think he's signaling the same thing. And
I think they have already accelerated their efforts, thankfully. Partly I think certainly some of the research was driven by the work that's been going on in China, right? And
Sure.
Potential rise of the yuan as a global currency could potentially impact the US dollar. So I think there's a long way to go, a lot of studying to be done. But just to put it into context, there's other major markets are doing similar things. So in Europe, there's a Digital Euro Association, which we're also a member of and working with, and also Digital Pound Foundation in the UK. So these, the digital dollar project, Euro, Pound, all doing similar things, right? It's really the private sector trying to encourage the public sector to move a bit more quickly.
And here we have on top of that, we know that the UK has said that they're looking to release a digital pound stablecoin in the coming weeks. And remember, a stablecoin could be the Band-Aid while they continue to develop a CBDC. But listen to this quick clip here about what he says about CBDCs being introduced in the next year.
You'll be seeing lots of different things. I'm not going to pre-announce anything, obviously, but I think there's going to be a lot of activity on CBDCs this year, a ton.
That's going to do it for me. Make sure you leave a comment below and make sure you sign up for the XRP Army event of the year, ladies and gentlemen, of a lifetime, in fact. I'm going to make sure that this is an incredible event. Click below, join the Mastermind group if you want the VIP ticket as well. Don't mess around. It is limited seating. It will be capped. I'll catch all of you on the next one.